to walk the talk. We have to live what we're teaching, otherwise we'll be hypocrites, and we don't want to do that.
No, so we talk about our dating adventures and other people's dating adventures, huh?
I think adventures is a safe way to put it, versus dating mishaps, accidents, traumas, challenges, experiences.
Yes, the world of dating, and that's why we're here.
Absolutely.
So it's Going Solo Media. Let's talk about dating with Barry and Christine. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Christine. Love the hat.
Thank you. Me too. You know me. I love my hat.
Yes, we talked about that.
I do. I love my hats. I get to feel like I have like sort of different personas. Not really a different personality, but just I get to feel a little different depending on what hat I put on.
Well, it's funny because I used to wear fedoras all the time, especially when I'm out on Sundays at church, go dressed up nice.
Uh-huh.
But the thing is, when I go during the daytime, I wear a baseball cap because I don't want to get sunburned. But it's just functional more than like trying to look, particularly debonair or whatever that is. But the fedoras is funny because I haven't worn them in so long. I almost don't want to go back to them. I'm so almost done with them. It's strange.
Yeah, it was a phase.
A phase, yes.
So today we're talking about, yes, Cece's like, get to the topic. How self-aware are you really? And I decided I'd look up the definition.
Oh, fancy.
I liked it. I said, I'll read it if I like it. And I liked it.
Okay.
So it's a noun, and it says it's a conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and desires. The process can be painful, but it leads to greater self-awareness. I like that definition.
I would agree with that.
Me too. I read it.
I'm not going to the dictionary, but I'm going, yeah, I've been through that. It's had pleasure, had pain, had freedom, had jump, and God. I have a list of experiences I've had through the journey. So yes.
Yes. And I was thinking, so much about self-awareness is really knowing who are you today?
Mm-hmm.
And then looking at why are you like that today? And does it work for you today? And is there anything you want to do differently today? I know. And so my mom used to say, do you know, I so watch most people in the world are just walking around unconscious. Because my mom was this hyper aware person. We always knew everything that was going on and everything she saw and everything was big. So we were all encouraged to be very self-aware while we were growing up. And it was really interesting to get out in the world and go, not everybody thinks this way. How interesting is that? Because it is painful and scary and distracting and can be so hard, especially if you don't like what you find out. You're like, oh, crap.
Well, I wasn't raised in a family that way, to be honest. Self-awareness was not something I was taught. Thankfully, in my early 20s, started to learn what that meant because I got involved in all the personal growth work that changed my life. And for me, the self-awareness piece, there's more than one layer, and I know we'll get into that more and more, because it's tempting to go, I'm self-aware because I notice other people, so I'm going to judge them completely. That's not true self-awareness. That's awareness to have one-upmanship.
It sounds a little judgmental to me.
Just a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
So the path of self-awareness is not a one-stop shop. It's like a continuous journey. And I talked about this in other conversations about the codependency piece. And when self-awareness is one of the best places to start to disengage that paradigm, because a lot of our codependent patterns, things where we feel reacted to things without any volition, choice, decision, is almost like automatic. And so having self-awareness gives us the freedom to choose how we want to respond. And we talked about this a few weeks ago, I think, it's response versus reaction. So this self-awareness piece is really the underpinning of everything we've talked about for quite a while. And once you get this, it's a game changer.
Yes. And I found, for me, and when I work with my clients, it's definitely a game changer. It's such an important piece about, wow, I could be really satisfied with how my life is going. And I won't feel like a victim. I won't feel like life is happening to me. I'll feel like I am doing things with my life. And it's incredibly empowering.
It's boy, I mean, like let's just say I've been on this journey of self-awareness in terms of personal growth for over 35 years. So to distill it into one sentence where it'll trying to come out at once, that becomes another process. It's like having self-awareness about my own desire to show everybody how to do it right, sort of thing. It just cracks me up.
Yeah.
The thing for me more than anything else, though, is, and one of the things I learned from one of my seminars years ago was that, and I was actually talking about it yesterday on Clubhouse, about how awareness is all that's needed to heal, transform. It's like when you become aware of something, you go, oh, I don't need to do that anymore, and it can change. However, there's more to it than that, and it also requires that, as you said earlier about the painful part of the process, the challenging part of the process, is a lot of people haven't chosen to become more self-aware because oftentimes they're afraid to look in the mirror. And then we definitely want to cover that early, because that's a key piece of the process. You've got to be willing to say, you know what, I'm bigger than this, or I'm stronger than this, or I'm more willing to go through this and stay where I am, because the feeling I have now where I feel stuck or unconscious, so to speak, because you're aware of it, it's consciously unconscious, so to speak, is the recognition that I want to do something different. So that choice point to move from the comfort and safety, that's a loose term, of being unaware, to living in the world of self-awareness and then awareness of everything else. It's not a quick choice. It does require well, actually, going to say another way. It can require either a conscious choice to make it happen, which means you've got to be aware enough to make the choice to become aware, or something happens to you that forces you into it.
Yes.
Such as trauma, loss, transformation that happens without your control. But then you just get almost pushed into the level of where it's like, oh, I see the world differently now.
Yes, and I am so understanding that the saying that's been around for a very long time, ignorance is bliss, has been around for a long time, because it is, until you can't stand it anymore.
Right.
The blinders that we put on because we don't want to see something we might need to change, or feel something that just seems too overwhelming and painful, that we just want to pretend it's not really happening. It's not really there. And it's understandable. It's really understandable. And I never give anybody a hard time about it. But what I look for is when they call me and they say, I've had it with what is happening, what isn't happening, that I want something differently in my life. That's when they're saying it's now gotten too painful. And there's that wonderful Anise, right? She's the one that said that you change when it becomes less scary to change and more painful to stay the same. Because otherwise, in the beginning, we think, oh, it's too scary to change, and it's not that painful to stay the same, but the pain level just keeps going up and up and up. Yeah.
The way one of my teachers put it was, when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, then you make a change.
Yeah.
and that's the piece, sorry, I'm going to jump in. That's the piece for me is recognizing that, I've talked about this before, especially with clients, and we talked about this on the show before about that, those past relationship experiences we have, and we don't choose to look at what happened to change them. So we repeat the same thing again and again. And that serial relationship pattern, which I went through several times. I have the, what's one looking for? The track record. That doesn't work. But it took me a couple of times to go, whoa, hang on a second. That's me, not them. That's a part of self-awareness. It's willing to look in the mirror and point at ourselves and say, okay, what is it I can do differently? How can I be more effective, more caring, more happy in my ongoing relationships? I mean, I don't want to take it too far away from that topic, but of course, self-awareness is not just about romantic relationships. It's about the way you are in the world. But I like to make sure we do keep dipping into that one too. So there's relevance too.
Family, colleagues, friends. Because the more self-aware you are, the less you feel misunderstood, because you're feeling misunderstood by yourself. If you can't figure out who you really are and what you really believe in and what's important to you, you'll start believing what everybody else is saying, and it maybe doesn't fit you.
Right.
And I'm always struck by how similar you and I, there's so many things we've done differently in our lives and our growth paths, and how similarly our dating path and self-discovery was that, oh, it's me. Oh, it's me. Oh my gosh. I am the common denominator of all these different people that are sitting across the table from me, and maybe I could do something about it.
Ding,
So
ding, ding.
I think that's the best part, that you just go, oh, yucky, it's me. Yeah, wow, sucks. Because we all go through that. What kind of a person allows this to happen? What kind of person wouldn't have seen this? I'm so smart in other things. You know, I had ran a really successful business and I didn't know how to date differently. I didn't have any idea. And it didn't bother me until I wanted to get married, and I wouldn't have married any of the people I was dating. I was like, well, I think that's a problem. So what about me did I need to look at and explore and alter my way of believing and thinking about me and dating and men and marriage, because I'd formed all those impressions when I was growing up, and parents who fought all the time, and a first marriage where we fought a lot. And who wants to go do that again? At least I was deciding not to do that. I just wasn't sure how to not do that.
Right.
So then when I figured out how to, well, what do I need to think differently that I would attract a man that doesn't have a temper, that has enough self-awareness that he can rethink about what he's going to do and say. And it was interesting because we talked about that not too far in our dating, that his first marriage was pretty even keel. His second marriage was so volatile. Right. And I was very concerned because here I was being very aware that I didn't want a man that had an uncontrollable temper. And we talked a lot about why and what he had learned and how he had altered the way that he was dealing with his daughter, the other woman in his life, and how he really saw how important it was to make this change. So it made me continue dating him, because it was definitely a pink flag that came up, besides that he'd been married twice before. He said he'd never been asked so many questions in his life, because I was so aware of what was important to me now. And I'd never even thought about it before, that particular area.
That's the thing that, and again, back to dating conversation, so many people are dating, I won't say out of convenience, but out of opportunity versus out of choice. Mm-hmm. And what you said there about when you dated your man before he became your husband, that interrogation is something that we don't think about doing oftentimes. We just go, well, it's nice, and I think I love me, I think I love them, good enough. And so that's the reason why so many divorces and so many relationship challenges, because people haven't done their quote homework before they started. So self-awareness, and then being willing enough to check somebody else's self-awareness is good too, looking for partnership. Because if you're doing the work and becoming self-aware, I've had a conversation about this in another room. Again, Club has been my teaching place for quite a while, and we had a conversation last week about this, about where all the conscious men. It's like, the thing is, when you start doing the work on yourself, then you're going to want to meet someone else who's done the work themselves as well, so you can be on the same page. Because and just to be transparent, in my dating life, being single, having done all this work, not say that everyone has to do the same work I've done, but in fact, I know enough to know enough. Yeah. When I meet somebody who hasn't done anything, and I watch them say things and do things that's so clearly indicating not done any work, it's a complete turnoff. Doesn't matter how much physically attractive they are. So if they haven't done that part, it's like, you want to be my client? Because I can't date you. Yeah. But you really need to talk to me as a client. Yeah, I don't do that. There's a banner.
No. But you think that so loudly in your head. I feel that way too. When I sit with men, I think, I so want to have you talk to me or talk to Barry or talk to somebody, because you see, once you've gone through the processes, because it is ongoing, it's not just one and done, the benefits are rich. And the other thing that you didn't say, but it made my mind think about, one of the reasons that people often date is because they're lonely. And so you're not going to be discriminating at all if you're lonely. And part of becoming self-aware is
better, basically. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sorry.
Why are you lonely?
Yeah.
Why are you lonely? figuring out on your own how to fix that loneliness that doesn't require another person. Another person's wonderful to have, and it's another layer of a person there. But I've never been lonely pretty much in my whole life. I can occupy myself. I have lots of hobbies. I seek out friends and family when I need company. I loved being married, and I look forward to having a partner again, because there is a whole nother layer of somebody's there every day and you get to talk to them and you have each other's back and you get to look to a future together. But I didn't marry him because I was lonely.
Right.
That was not even a piece of it. And I think people, if you get into this decision to work on being more self-aware, you can get to the bottom of why you feel lonely and do something on your own.
That is, sorry, I jumped on your words earlier, but that's the thing is realizing that you don't have to have somebody next to you just to feel okay.
Yeah.
And that you can start to come back to a place. And this the thing is and I say this in my own work, is that, you know, most of the work in my relationship coaching is not relationship with somebody else, it's relationship with self. Yeah. So the self-awareness piece is the cornerstone of that work. Yep. And it is such a, and this thing you said earlier about ignorance is bliss, that sense some people have is like, you know, you wish it would be so simple. One of the challenges of opening up to self-awareness and growing is there isn't a way back. Once you open the door, it doesn't close. Yeah. So you might pretend to be like, I'm just going to be ignorant again and not worry about it. Yeah. You can't fake that.
No.
So being willing to keep going, because that's the only way through is to keep going, growing, and everything else. For me, that's been the most fulfilling part of my life in the journey I've been on, and it's given me a chance to do so much work for other people. Why do the work I do? And relationships haven't been that frequent because I don't want one. Let's say this way. I haven't needed a relationship for a long time. That's the biggest piece. And that's the work we're doing, self-awareness, is that a relationship, if and when I have one, is going to be absolutely additive to who I am, not filling some need I think I have, or a gap I think I have. And so when I met, and it's funny because a woman I've known for a long time reached out to me telling me she had a crush on me, which sounds so cute, but I know where she's coming from. It's like, nah, because she hasn't done the work. And I can feel that yearning for something to make her feel whole because she's not doing it herself. And this is one of those things we do, is that we carry this illusion inside that we're not complete. So when I meet my other half, or my soulmate, or my twin flame, they'll make me feel better. And then I'll have an amazing relationship. Like, no. The amazing relationship happens when you have an amazing relationship with yourself first.
Yeah, it's so true. And the more work you do, the less you'll want to be with somebody that hasn't done the work, and the less attracted you'll be to them, and the more you'll seek out somebody that's done the work. Now, I'm going to say out loud, nobody arrives. You're not
right.
at a destination. It's always a continuing journey. And the good news and bad news is it is a challenge every time something new comes up. There's always something new. And what I learned through John Gray, and it's so watch it happen every time, is that as we're going into a relationship and it's fun and it's exciting and it's, you know, there's so emotional, physical charge going on. And then you end up in kind of this little even plane thing before you move to the next level. And that's when you go, I think I'm starting to question things. I think I'm really concerned. And we think there's something wrong. And it isn't always something wrong. It's just that there's this new layer that now that you're comfortable, you're like, let's just bubble up to the surface and work on this and become a little more aware of it. And it's like, holy crap, is it that I need to leave them because it's uncomfortable? And it's not necessarily that's true. That could come up, that you learn something about somebody and go, oh, no. And I found, for me personally, and for my clients, frequently, it's that we need to work on this. So stick it out a little bit to see what happens once you get to the other side of working on this. Because either it brings you closer, because the other person's going to step up and work on theirs too, because theirs is going to come up at the same time. Or you're going to say, I'm glad I learned this and you're not for me. So I think that's really important to say out loud, that yeah, there's some good parts about the journey and there's some really sucky parts about the journey. And oh, well, isn't that how everything is?
I, I have no words, because I'm looking at, if they gave you little cliff notes funny of my own journey. I mean, I've said before in this talk about how, in a show about how I got into this work in the first place was because I had 3 relationships in a row where I had amazing, great time, great sex, everything's wonderful, but every time the relationship would end because I wasn't occupying my space in the relationship that I was meant to, the masculine space. And I'd done all this work before that. That's why, again, this journey doesn't end. I've been in the personal growth for decades, and I knew so much stuff, but I was still messing up. But the good news is that, first of all, I knew there was something missing. This first awareness is about what's not there. I didn't understand, didn't know yet. The second part was I didn't judge the other people, the women, because I knew that what was inside of me. And the third piece was, for me, it was as crazy as it sounds. Part of us go, oh, goody, something else to learn.
Finally.
And that's the thing, is it wasn't, even though I was frustrated because I didn't have what I wanted and upset because the relationship ended, at the same time, there was actually a very positive experience, because it was kind of going, oh, something new to learn, it'd be fun. Because the thing is about this work is it does become very positive to keep enjoying the growing, because it's almost like becoming a voracious reader of books. It's like, something new to read. Mm-hmm. Growing, the same thing. And for me, it's that expression and owning of more stuff. So thankfully, the journey doesn't end. You don't get to the end of this destiny to go, okay, I know everything there is to know. It's like, well, and I'm quoting Richard Buck on this about, if you want to know if your mission Earth is finished, if you're still here, it isn't. So with growth, like, you don't end the growth journey with total awareness. If you're not continuing to learn, I mean, I hate the phrase they say, it's like, if you're not growing, you're dying. I don't agree with that statement. But if you're not growing, you're stagnating.
Yes. Yes.
So this journey is a constant dipping in and passion to know more about ourselves and how to be in the world.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
And it is an amazing, like a light switch that does ultimately happen, where I did and you did switch to the, what's next?
Yeah.
What's next? It's sort of like when you're learning a language and you stop having to translate it in your brain. You finally see, oh yeah, I know it's going to be a little hard and a little sucky, and the benefit. I've now had it over and over enough that I go, oh, bring it on. Bring it on. Sometimes in the middle, I will whine to my friends going, I remember Oprah Winfrey once saying, I know I'm supposed to learn a lesson every day, but could I have a day off and I'll learn 2 tomorrow? I've certainly had those moments where I've called my friends and said, really, this is a lot at once. And could we just wait a week? I'd like a week. Could I have a vacation from learning right now?
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
And every time I go, well, what did I learn? And I needed to learn that, and it's made my life better. And it was such a valuable lesson to learn. So it has made me, I was excited when I did have that. Finally, the light switch went off about, okay, bring it on. What's the next thing? Because the benefits always, and I'm somebody who found my husband dead on the floor, always there are benefits, because I couldn't prevent it. There's nothing I could do about it. I've had to really go through the journey of, well, what did I gain from that? What did I learn from that? What made me a better person? What made me appreciate being alive even more? And I thought I was a pretty grateful person. Oh my God, that made me appreciate waking up even more, because I know for a fact not everybody gets that gift. And that's such a weird thing to say and a weird part of my journey. But if you can get through that and all the other things that we go through in our lives, it's the part that goes, well, okay, and a relationship ended. What did I learn from that? What did I gain from being there? What have I learned from it leaving? So that we don't go down the spiral of, I'm a bad person and I don't know what I'm doing and it's all going to just be awful. It gets us going back up again about, well, I learned I'm more valuable. I'm learned to really even more listen to my instincts, ask even more pointed questions, since we know I'm good at that. And so not a question. And when you do that switch, it's like, yeah, I'm the bomb now. And so when the next hard thing, challenging thing, introspective thing about, oh my God, I didn't know that about me comes up, you remember what it's like to get to the other side.
I just want to highlight something because I want to also make sure that something's clear. Because when you said about you finding your husband dead on the floor, you didn't immediately go into gratitude.
Oh God, no! It took me 5 years.
I was going to say, no, because some people might be hearing goes like, "How could you do that?" It's like, no, I just want to because.
Thank you. It's it'll be 9 years next month, and I've said that so often. I do sound a little flip, don't I? And so thank you for bringing it back to the real world. Doesn't think this is a flip thing to say.
Yeah, self-awareness does not mean ignoring feeling upset when something bad happens.
Oh,
just to be clear. The second piece I want to drop in also is it's almost about there's something, and you said it in there, something I heard, you didn't say, but I heard in what you were saying, is about also is valuing life and valuing a little piece of it too, because that's the benefit. When my mum passed away in 2012, that was something that at the time was so challenging because I got to see her when she was sick, but I didn't see her when she passed away. I just went after the funeral to being back in England. But the sense of not taking my life for granted became more real.
Yeah.
So there was a gift that came through that, even though there was a lot of sadness and distress. Although I was actually more upset when I saw her when she was sick than when she passed, because I knew when she passed, she was actually at peace.
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of thing happened.
Yeah.
So to reiterate that point, is we definitely can look at life as how we can benefit from things, how we can learn from things, with the understanding that some of those things don't come immediately.
Oh God,
Sometimes you spend time in the upset, the wounding, the suffering from a bad breakup or divorce or death or trauma or injury, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had several things where I've had like stuff stolen or lost through property things that were a little bit easier to get over at a certain point. Some were harder because I had more attachment, because there were certain things when they were stolen there were memories tied to them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like understanding that all of this is ultimately, and this is the thing to say on a very philosophical viewpoint, is everything is transitory.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I want to be careful how I go with this because I don't get too philosophical. But understanding that relationships have their journey as well, which may be for the lifetime, may not be. But your awareness of yourself during that journey makes the relationship more potent, more valuable, and more rewarding when you take yourself on the journey through that relationship.
Yes.
So.
Oh, it's so poignant, Barry. Thank you.
Okay. I didn't go too far off the deep end on that one.
So Cece says it's time for a break.
Yes,
so
of course.
We'll talk more about how to get to that point of self-awareness and how that journey can take place, and maybe some steps that you can use when we get back from the commercials.
We'll see you in a minute.
Okay. We're
Okay.
back talking about.
I'm talking again after all that.
I know. How self-aware are you really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So some steps to become. We've talked about the benefits, about some things that could make your life easier and better and more fulfilling, and for you personally and for your peripheral relationships, business and family and friends and romantic, and why that would be an important journey to take to get to be more self-aware. So maybe we could talk about some steps that people could take to do that.
Certainly.
Now that we told them how hard it's going to be, rewarding it's going to be.
Don't scare anybody. No, of course not.
I know they're like, why would I want to do that?
I would suggest, well, the simplest, for me, the simplest key to start the journey, and it's going to sound so strange to say it this way, is to become aware, which means that notice things. And the easy thing to notice, because it's kind of self-awareness, is notice when things piss you off. It sounds simple, but I'm sure you've experienced things when you're driving on the freeway, or you talk to your spouse, or family members, or the kids, or the police, or the government, or watching something on TV where you get triggered. You're like, upset about something. Well, the thing is, that's a clue that maybe you're not as aware as you thought you were. So it starts the journey of unfoldment. And let me be clear. I've been in this journey for many years, several decades. I still get triggered by things, but I get better and better at closing the gap between when I get triggered and when I say, I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Because that's the journey. It's not about being totally oblivious. It's not like I've been a hermit in a cave for the last 50 years meditating and I come out and it's all fine. It's like, no, in the world, participate in the world and stuff happens. So the first step of awareness is to notice what it is that is pricking you, like sticking you with upsets and hurt feelings. Because when you become aware of it is when you start changing it. Mm-hmm. And the awareness piece is the first step for all this. And I've said this before other times about how simple awareness is often curative. Like when you become self-aware is when things don't affect you as much. So again, I think we talked this a few weeks ago, as I said earlier, about the difference between reaction versus response. Is when you become aware when something's coming at you, it stops you jumping into automatic fight, argument, everything else as well. It gives you a chance to step back and go, hang on a second, what happened there? Do I need to do the same thing? There's one of my friends talks about Victor Frankl has a book out. He was in the Second World War in the prison camps. He has a book out called A Man's Search for Meaning, and I use one quote from there. But a quote he uses from the book is about between between reaction and response, there is a moment where you can choose. Mm-hmm. And understanding is that's the awareness of awareness. That's where awareness happens, is when something happens that you normally react to and you go, hang on a second. It's that choice you make that gives you the awareness to go, what's really happening here? Mm-hmm. When you get upset with the police for pulling you over, are you upset with the police, or are you upset with yourself because you didn't drive slow enough, or you didn't fix that tail light they noticed, or wherever it was? Mm-hmm. So you're taking it out on them. The reality is something you need to take care of. Not say you start getting upset with yourself, but you start saying, okay, I can take responsibility. And by the way, one of the things of self-awareness is being able to be responsible for how you are in the world. That's a massive piece of this work, by the way. That's one thing. So what do you have for that?
It's such a good point. I've found that when something really annoys you, it's often, not 100%, right, way more than 50%, something that you haven't acknowledged in yourself. And if you take that as a fact to at least consider, you might discover, I didn't know I felt that way. I didn't know I believed that way. That it'll give you a chance to make a decision about whether or not you're going to believe that way anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's a great litmus test. It really is. It's one of the most tried and true if you pay attention to it. That if the way somebody talks, or the way they act, or the way they're handling themselves in the world. And what's really interesting, it's not necessarily that you're doing it exactly the same way. It's that you have an issue around it that you probably haven't dealt with on your own.
And when you notice happening the third time,
yeah.
or the fourth time, or the fifth time, is when you go, I think I can do something different this time.
or the 37th time. Because
Indeed.
sometimes we have to see it finally the 38th time and we're like, oh, I get it. I mean, I tease that there's times when you hear the same saying or you've read something and it really is like 537 times. And the 38th time, you're like, oh, is that what it's been saying all this time?
It's so true. I've had that more than once. Actually,
Yeah.
I was on a Zoom call yesterday, and the person was telling me something about something. I'm like, this sounds so familiar.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, it was like, oh crap, I do know this. So it's almost like, yeah, the reminder. So there's always refinement, and it's always a process. So the thing, and one thing I'll say this as well, because the one thing I've discovered really a lot recently is one of the benefits of self-awareness is a much lighter heart. I've had things happen in the last 6 months where something that I would look at in the past and maybe be reactive to or upset by or triggered by, I just started laughing at.
Yeah.
Part of me was going like, oh, this again. It's like, and not like being, not facetious is the wrong word, but not being callous. Yeah, not being callous about it. But I just saw the humor in the fact that it's like, oh, I need to take care of this. Like it was almost like, okay, on me, I get it, no problems, I fix it.
Yes.
That's the freedom of this work, is you start to have a lot less pressure in here and a lot less depression, period, because you start to realize how life can be fun, even with the challenges.
Yes. You have more grace for yourself and for the other people.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is it might be a whole new awareness. Oh, wow, I never thought about it that way before. Or as you were saying, oh, yeah, I knew that and I kind of forgot, or I knew that and wow, here's a new level. I mean, that's another thing. If you can flip that switch where it just becomes, oh, wow, I get to learn something new. So to reiterate, to pay attention if the same activity that one person does or a whole bunch of people do, the thing they do, the thing they say, their attitude just grates on your nerves. Look at it inside of you. Do a little introspective about, well, how do I actually believe about that? And why do I believe that? Because that's the other thing, that we just expound things without any basis of, well, we read it in the newspaper or saw it on Facebook, or we were raised to believe this. And it's not that it's not the truth. The challenge is we don't always examine it. Does this really fit me? Does it fit me today? As I said in the beginning, this is the important step. Is it might have fit then. It might have worked just fine then, but it's getting on your nerves because it doesn't fit your life now. It doesn't fit your attitude. It doesn't fit what you've learned about yourself or the world around you. And it's like you've outgrown your shoes. You know, you have shoes that you've outgrown or your skin that you've outgrown. And you need to let yourself expand, but you can't unless you go through this process, I think.
Yeah. No, the journey is, as I said, the journey is not a shortcut. It's also not something that is the same for everybody. But the recognition is that when you start doing this path, life gets to be more, I wouldn't say it's easier necessarily, because I'm going to give you a lot harder. However, it does become more valuable. I think for what I've really discovered in this, for me, my own personal journey, having this work for a long time, is I value the interpersonal relationships I have. They were so, to be honest, assumed before, or casual, or the investment wasn't as high. Now my relationships are much deeper, my friendships and people I work with, because I value the time we spend together. There's something about that has meaning for me. And so self-awareness has so many pieces. I mean, just about, I'm realizing when we make sure we talk about things we can help people to use with self-awareness. So one was about the triggering, but another part of self-awareness is doing things that start raising the bar. Like, for example, and we talked about this before, about doing gratitude practices or affirmations or things like that. Start to amplify your awareness, because by doing them, you're noticing what you feel. You're noticing how you are with yourself. And so self-awareness doesn't have to be trauma-driven or reaction-driven. It can be proactively done. So being self-aware is basically, you can start with, how can you talk to yourself differently? Like and also, how can you listen to yourself differently? Another part of that.
So pay attention to tack onto that. Are you speaking to yourself kindly? Are you speaking to yourself in a derogatory manner? How are you treating yourself? Yeah. Because the more aware you are of how you're treating yourself, the more you'll go, well, that's not very nice. I mean, how often have we said to somebody, would you talk to somebody you love like that? Would you talk to your best friend like that? Would you talk to your little child like that?
Right.
And this is how you're talking to yourself. And people just do it. You know, it's what they heard when they were growing up. It's that they're just not aware of what they're saying. So to just become more aware of, well, how am I talking to myself? And is that kindly? Is it appropriate? Is it accurate?
Oh yeah, and I mean the old quote about if you treat your friends like you treat yourself, you wouldn't have any.
No, you'd have crappy friends.
Well, yeah, but that's the understanding, is that we often don't treat ourselves as well as we treat other people. So to have a word of kindness, so when things happen, I'm using the term things happen intentionally, you have a choice how you respond to that. You have a choice how you move forward from that point. And for most of us, oftentimes it's a judgment, self-flagellation, getting upset. It's like, oh, damn, I did it again. How screwed up. In relationships, I did that a long time. Or like, I screwed up. It's like, oh, damn, didn't want to do that. All the hate and upset stuff. That's not constructive, first of all. And secondly, I don't get any different result out of it. So to speak to that place of going, okay, that didn't work. I didn't do the best I could have done in that relationship, which probably was the truth. Yeah. And maybe she didn't either. Not to say that I need to worry about that part, because I can only take care of what's in here anyway.
Yeah.
So what can I do differently going forward?
Mm-hmm.
Again, self-awareness is being aware of what we're going through and what we're thinking to ourselves. So that conversation we have with ourselves, which oftentimes isn't conscious, because we just realize after 3 weeks we've been damning ourselves to hell because something we said to somebody 3 weeks ago isn't fun. So if you can catch yourself 3 weeks in, then 2 weeks in, then 1 week in, you start changing the paradigm. And one of these things to be aware of is that we make mistakes. Part of being human is the gift of making mistakes, and then the choice of what we do with that. So recognizing that we can step into a much greater sense of compassion for ourselves, and willingness to learn from the mistakes we've made so we can be happier and healthier.
Yes. And the other side of the coin, because I like talking about that, is when you become more self-aware, you can say, look at what I'm good at. Look at why people like me. You can start saying consciously really nice things about yourself, along with, oh crap, look how much I have to still learn and mistakes I'm making. It helps balance it out, and it makes the work of improving and changing and reevaluating, it balances it out. So if you'll stay more in your conscious, who am I and what am I doing and why am I doing it, you really will get some good things too, I promise. It's really kind of remarkable. It's not all negative.
Surprise, surprise.
I know, because I think often people do think if they're going to be doing introspective work, it's only going to be negative and hard and scary and sad. And yeah, there is that. And it's helped me be even more aware of, well, I'm doing a pretty good job in a whole bunch of areas. How cool is that?
I would say on that point that, yes, I agree with you. Definitely you've had those quote downsides, but the thing is, but the upsides have been way more abundant than the downsides. And also one of the things I remember one of the teachers, again, so many teachers I've been with, that's why I've been on this journey so long, is there was a piece that talks about how oftentimes we have the experience in our lives where we look at the valleys of our downs and the peaks of the highs. And sometimes we look back and go and think it's like, it seems like I keep going through the same thing again and again. But what we don't recognize is when you start doing this work and over periods of time, what were once your mountaintops are now the valleys of where you are now. So it's not you still have valleys and mountaintops, so to speak, of your ups and downs of feelings, but your downs are higher than your old ups were.
Yes.
Meaning that you're raising the bar. So your journey through this becomes much more positive, uplifting, and conscious. Yes. So even though you have down times, the down feelings are actually really cool, because you're going, I feel so much better than I used to, because you've transformed your relationship to yourself. So it's great. It's worth the journey, because the positives far outweigh the negatives, far outweigh.
Definitely. When you get into doing this kind of work, you will absolutely decide that there's way more positives than negatives. It just doesn't feel that way in the very beginning at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I should take it back. I remember the first seminar I was in, and I had experience before that, but the first seminar I was in, it was a 5-day seminar, and it was the first day of the weekend. It was like 3 evenings, then the weekend. And it was halfway through the weekend, and we'd done a couple of pretty powerful processes, but I was like, yeah, it hadn't hit me yet. Like I was going, that's interesting. Okay, great. And we did this dyad process right before lunch on Saturday. And the process, I'm looking at what the process was, but it was basically a chance to confront how we hide. And at the end of it, and it was a pretty powerful process to go through, but at the end of it, we were told to sit across from the other person and just look in their eyes. And by the way, we'd chosen the person in the room who was the most challenging to us. So it wasn't easy to do that with anybody, but particularly with this person.
Yeah.
But by the end of the dyad, we had so much vulnerability because in the process of talking about how do we hide, we weren't hiding. I mean, that was one of the funny parts about it. It's like I said, by the way, you realize when you were doing this, you weren't hiding. And they played it, and this is back in the 80s. So they were playing John Denver songs through all the different event things. And we spent the 3.5 minutes of the song looking each other's eyes. And I was in tears after that process for the first time that I was aware of in my life. But the opening inside was such a gift of healing that I didn't know at the time I was going through. Because part of me had it wired where tears were bad. But what I was realizing was it was actually release, and it's actually lifting me up. So I would say that from the very beginning of my journey, I've had experiences that at the time might have been freaking me out, scaring me, making me nervous. Every single time I look back at them going, I'm so glad I went through it.
Yeah. And it's consistently how I have felt on my journeys, and consistently how I hear my clients say that when you get to the other side of each of these steps, you're like, I am so glad I did that. I'm so glad I did that, because look at the benefits I'm reaping. I'm feeling more in touch with who I am. I'm feeling more valuable. I'm feeling like I can be vulnerable with the right kind of people. Because part of the lack of self-awareness is, I find that we're more on guard because we don't know our strengths. We don't know that we can tell somebody no, thank you, in a really strong way, or we could say, oh yeah, come forward more, in a really positive way, that we're just kind of floating along. And I think one of the things that people find challenging too is that our lives are so busy that we have to go into automatic pilot a lot. So set aside a time, 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night, to say, well, how am I feeling about me? You know, what kinds of things do I think are positive? What kind of things are negative that I don't like about me, or I wish was different? And then, so maybe do that in the morning, and then at night say, well, what sorts of things did I do today that were kind of different? Because what I find, as you talked about, that it's like the toothpaste is out of the tube, that once you start thinking this way, you start noticing, like I'll tease people, I go, watch for blue cars, because there's not a lot of blue cars, but you discover there's a lot of blue cars if you're looking. So if you've now said, what sorts of things are working in my life? I'll think about that. And what sorts of things aren't working? They like percolate. And then if you rethink about it at the end of the day, there's some things that have popped up, sort of like that gratitude journal we all did because Oprah said we should, that we had to come up with 3 things we were grateful at the end of the day. We paid attention during the day, by God, because we were going to come up with our 3 things we were going to write about. So it's like it goes out of the hamster wheel in the back of our brain and comes up more to the front of, let's be more conscious of what's going on in my life today. What happened in my life today, where we don't normally think that way.
Oh, that's the cornerstone of this for me, is that recognition. It's the step-by-step journey. And boy, we get to West for 4 days. I know, it's just like, where to go from there?
I know, because we talk another hour with that point, right?
Yeah. I mean, and it is that recognition for me that this is a journey we can play on and express and have fun with. And really to be willing to say yes to ourselves. Because the other part of this for me is that the more you do the personal growth work, the more you do the self-awareness journey, the more you value who you are.
Yes.
And that piece will transform every single relationship, because you start showing up more whole, more full, more completely. Yeah. And people start seeing you differently. You know, I said to my clients before, it's like, you know, when we do this work, you start healing those wounds inside. You show up more fully, and you become, you know, and also when you're supporting yourself, talking about the self-love journey, which self-awareness is part of. Yeah. When you start really owning who you are and embracing who you are, you become more attractive to those people around you. So if you're looking for a good relationship, be the better partner.
Yeah.
So do the work inside. So self-awareness is a good key to get through the door to where you want to go.
And it's amazing how when you do the internal work, how people are like, what did you do different?
Right.
Did you
shave your hair?
Did you lose weight? And you haven't necessarily, even though
Right.
sometimes it helps you take better care of yourself. Mostly it's your inside keeps glowing outside.
You shine your light.
Amazing. Yeah. Why not? Why wouldn't you want to shine your light more in the world and make it a better place for you and the people around you?
So our invitation is, please do.
Yes, please do. Step up and become a little more self-aware. And we'd be happy to help you now that Cece's telling us we have to stop talking.
Here we go.
We're never done until Cece says, well, yeah, you are now. Because she's the boss.
She is.
Yes. We only have the illusion of control for this little 50 minutes that we're here.
Part of the self-awareness journey is you learn you don't have control.
That's really true. I love that. That's so cool. So if you'd like to speak to me about this journey that we've been talking about that is so fulfilling. It's so fulfilling when you go on this journey of becoming more self-aware. You could reach out to me through my website, which is www.theperfectcatch.com, and click on what's holding you back from loving yourself, loving the other people in your life even more. And we'll have a chat. It's a complimentary chat with me. And you could also reach out to me through my email, which is christine@theperfectcatch.com. You can also reach me on social media on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Pinterest and LinkedIn.
Did that ready.
Good. And tell them how they can talk to you.
Plus YouTube and Instagram.
Oh, and YouTube and Instagram. Thank you, Eileen. This time I forgot 2 instead of just 1.
So if you want to reach out to me in this conversation or anything about relationships and love and finding the way through to get what you want, you can go to my website, which is in review right now because it's been redeveloped, and unfortunately they're doing it live versus in the background. So my website looks kind of it's not perfect yet, but they're redoing it, so it's going to look better soon. But if you go to barryselby.com, you can check out what it's looking like right now, and it will be looking better. But if you want to drop an email to me, go to barryselby.com. On my website, there should be some let's talk or contact me type thing in there. It's still getting developed, so apologies for that. But definitely email me, or you find me on social media on all the platforms, and it's Barry Selby on YouTube, on Pinterest, on Twitter, on Clubhouse, which I'm very busy on now. It's The Real Barry Selby on Instagram, and it's Barry Selby the author on Facebook. I think that covers, and LinkedIn is Barry Selby as well. I think I got everything.
Perfect. Well, thank you for always a really stimulating chat. I just love chatting with you. It's so fun every week. And we'll be back next week at 1 o'clock Pacific time and 4 o'clock Eastern time and all the times in between with another interesting, scintillating conversation about dating.
Works for me. We'll see you then.
Bye for now.
Bye.